Gospel according to John. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, the home of Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. There they gave a dinner for Jesus. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those at the table with him. And Mary took a pound of costly perfume made of pure nard, anointed Jesus' feet, and wiped them with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But Judas Iscariot, one of Jesus' disciples, the one who was about to betray him, said, "Why was this perfume not sold for 300 denarii and the money given to the poor?" Judas said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. He kept the common purse and used to steal what was put into it. But Jesus said, "Leave her alone. She brought it so that she might keep it for the day of my burial. You always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. We want to welcome Cori to the pulpit this morning. You know that we are trying to discourage people from applauding at the end of musical numbers and or presentations by guest speakers. So instead of applauding when Cori is finished, why don't you get out your checkbooks and write a check to the Issaquah Food Bank. Cori.
Thank you. As many of you know, there's a crisis in King County. More than ever, there are more people who are homeless and struggling just to get their basic needs met. And I applaud you, our Savior Lutheran, for consistently working side by side with the Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank and other nonprofits to ensure people are getting their basic needs met. And not only are you doing that, but you've bravely taken on the challenge of starting a safe parking program here at your church. I thank you. Can I just get a little show of hands for those of you who've been to the Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank and had a tour and are pretty familiar with what we do? Great, thank you. I don't want to make any assumptions today. I'm going to do an overview of all the things that we do at the food bank because I think you might be surprised. Even for those of you who've had a tour, you might learn something new. We do food and clothing and financial assistance, and we also provide one-on-one case management support. We have special programs, Lunch for the Break, which your congregation's very involved with. The summer lunch program, Groceries to Go, which is a food delivery program to homebound citizens. We have a Tools for School program, which is a backpack program, which you collect supplies and backpacks for us. I appreciate that. And we have a holiday gift barn, which serves about 1,300 children in our community. The Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank serves the entire Issaquah School District. And every week we have about 400 different households visiting our food bank. From those households each week, it equals about 1,200 different individuals. And at the end of every year, we serve about 4,000 unique individuals who come to the food bank for their very first time. 60% of the people we serve are senior citizens or children. We see those populations as our most vulnerable community members. And from 2014 to 2015, we saw a 56% increase in the number of homeless families that we helped. So that means we went from about 80 households to about 160 households. Last week alone, we served 10 brand new families who'd never visited the food bank before. People come to the food bank for a variety of reasons. They come because of an illness or an injury. They come because they're unemployed or underemployed. They come because their rental costs are getting increased, and they can no longer afford to pay their electric bills or their food expenses because their rent is so high in this community. They come because of job loss, and they come because of mental health issues. Our case manager, Rebecca Rayner, who's a rock star at the food bank, if you haven't met her, you should come in and meet her, says that there are 3 things that families most often come and ask her for help. One is housing and shelter referrals. And these are people from our community and our neighbors. They need connections to employment programs and mental health support. My mantra is that the Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank plays a huge role in solving food insecurity and helping our neighbors ensure that they have their most basic needs met, but we cannot do this work alone. We rely on partners like Our Savior Lutheran and each of you, our neighbors, our partner nonprofits, our cities, and all of our community members to tap into their passions and get involved with our work. Involvement might start with just coming down and getting a tour. So if you haven't seen the food bank, I think you'd be really surprised with how much food and services we cram into one tiny little building. And I recommend coming between 10 and 1 o'clock, right, Rowan and Barb? Come between 10 and 1 o'clock, and it will be busy and moving and shaking with lots of people. We have over 150 volunteers that help us every single week at the food bank. We could not do this work without those volunteers. We need volunteers to help us with high-level board work and strategies, and we need people to join board committees. My skill set is only this big, and I rely on a whole bunch of other people's skill sets to help us really run this nonprofit and do the best work that we possibly can do. I need your creative ideas on how we're going to come up with solutions for solving food insecurity in our community. Last year, the food bank brought in over 1 million pounds of food and distributed 1 million pounds of food. And that's Issaquah. So when we think about King County as a whole, and we think about South King County, we think about downtown Seattle, we think about Renton, this is a really big problem, and it's not getting better. And so nonprofits like ours rely on volunteers and community members like you to get engaged. We also need your creative ideas. We need your in-kind contributions of food and clothing. And like was said before, we need your financial support. And we've greatly appreciated the financial support we've gotten from this congregation already. Questions. So I know this isn't a meeting, but I like to wrap up my gatherings by encouraging people to think about a commitment. And this commitment might be to just simply go check out the Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank website. It might be to like us on Facebook, which is where you could get a lot of information, what's new and what our needs are. It could be to call a local nonprofit that you're passionate and you care about and go for a tour, or it could be just to volunteer somewhere. But I'd like to take 1 more minute of your time and connect with a neighbor next to you and share what maybe your commitment is. So go ahead and take a minute, and thank you so much for all that you already do for our community, and thanks for hearing me out today.
Sisters and brothers, a couple of reminders. 1, don't get in the habit of asking questions in the sermon time. A second reminder that those people that are served by the Issaquah Food Bank are not only God's daughters and sons, but our sisters and brothers. A third thing, Connie doesn't know about this, but Cori will be at the door. You may greet her then at the end of the hour, and Connie's going to be right next door so that the checks that you write can be put into her hands. Make them out, please, to the Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank. The hymn of the day, please.